The experts that best communicate their culture and their vision to their potential clients are those entrepreneurs that we remember. I'm Shelby Jo Long with the Expertise Podcast, and here we explore the stories of those entrepreneurs to inspire you to think about how you can monetize your expertise. Hi, and welcome to an episode of the Expertise Podcast. In this podcast, I interview experts that have influenced the world in their entrepreneurial adventures, and they help others, and they help promote their own products, and they use their own expertise as a base for their business. And on this podcast, I like to interview experts, and I bring on guests to be able to talk about their business and talk about how their business developed from their expertise. So today I have the opportunity, and you have the opportunity, to listen to an interview with Jason Miller, who is an owner of Miller & Company in Boulder, Colorado, and also multiple other businesses, which I'll let him introduce and him talk about. But Jason and I met a few months ago, and we met in the business coaching, business consulting world, because I do some business coaching, help people transform their expertise into income streams. Jason is in the same realm, and we connected, and now we are working together in multiple different industries with multiple clients. And it's been a very exciting adventure for me because my business has taken a new direction, and it's been an opportunity for us to grow another business together. We'll talk about the strategic advisor board later in the podcast, but I thought it was important to get into ask Jason about his expertise and where it came from, so we know a little bit of the story of where it came from. So with that introduction being said, I'll let Jason introduce himself. Jason, welcome to the podcast. I'm excited that you're here to be able to tell us about your business. I think it's so inspiring how you help other small businesses come to a level where they're not worrying about their next paycheck, and where they have some things planned out and they have that infrastructure set. Because a lot of small businesses like my own, I want to be in that position. And you are in the position to help people get there. And that's your whole process. But before we get into that process, I would like you to introduce yourself and tell a little bit of your background, and just tell us about your multiple businesses, please.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's great to be here. And, I love to be a part of, bigger vision and bigger thinking. I think it's important for us as business owners to, always be thinking about the next step, and where we can go. It's okay to be a dreamer, right? So dream and think big, because life's too short to do anything other than that. But, I come from very humble backgrounds. My father and mother ran a small farm in Montana, and, we didn't have a lot. And I grew up in that entrepreneurial mindset, which kind of drove me to where I am today. My mom owned a restaurant in town, and she owned a youth clothing store in town. My dad was a farmer, so they made their income. Wasn't much, but it was enough to raise a family, right? So, so I grew up around that spirit of things. And my father's a Vietnam vet, and my family has a rich history of military service, so really wasn't an option for me at that point. And I graduated high school, shipped off into the military, and spent 23 years doing that. Various things, so on and so forth. But in parallel to that, I always felt this need and this urge to fulfill that entrepreneurial side of me, right? And in 1999, after some of my first tour in the military, I just couldn't take it anymore. I had to put myself in the position where I could fulfill this other side of my life. And so I started a really small framing company, and we framed all kinds of stuff for people. It was all kind of an outsourced model, but but we did all this cool framing stuff for people. No matter what it was, geez, we did FFA jackets, we did all kinds of stuff, right? Um, and it was a neat little business, and it was my first real experience, like stepping out into that business world, and kind of following my parents' footsteps. But the company was actually successful. We grew it on some other platforms and eBay and other places, and we ended up growing that just shy of a 7-figure company, and it was amazing. And I sold that company, and I loved it so much. I started getting into the buy, sell, flip, strip, start a company, raise it up, sell it, so on and so forth. And then I started getting into that avenue of things. So we owned a bunch of little companies, and we kind of grew them up, put them on autopilot, and either stripped them out and sold them, or many different things. And, it was so easy to fulfill both sides of my life with service to my country plus running a company. Most people would say you're nuts for doing that. How do you manage all that, right? Well, it's a lot of sleepless nights. Was a lot of sleepless nights, coming home, working from 6 o'clock to 2 in the morning, getting back up, doing the military life. It's like in one moment you're in the military life, and the next moment you're in the business world. So it was odd, very odd, but I loved it and I thrived off of it. I spent a lot of my time in leadership positions and operational positions in the military. And when I was coming up to retirement, actually, from the military, I had several other companies, but I really wanted to take everything that I'd learned in that 20 years and help other business owners, break those chains. So I kind of followed the pack, started a little consulting firm, and did all the consulting pieces. And I just really saw how I hated that community. I didn't like that community because I started seeing how people were doing things, which led me into the creation of the results-based model. And I flipped the consulting world completely upside down. I created a model where we didn't win unless the business owner won. We'd go in, help solve their top 3 or 4 problems, and when that created additional revenue, we got paid for that. So it was a really neat model, and I refined it over 4 years. We worked with, over 4 years, I'm not sure the exact number, but definitely over a couple hundred clients over the 4 years. And then I hit a tipping point to where it's like, what's next for me? I acquired another company in the middle of all this. That was one of my clients that passed away, and I acquired that company. And that's a staffing agency. So I've got somebody in charge there running that company. And then there's 4 other companies. I won't get into what they are, but they're all kind of staffed out and ran by GMs. But, so I've created that passive system of doing less with more, right? So, but, I took Miller and Company and then had to really chew on my own dog bone, really, right? It's like, because I tell people, oh, you got to scale and pivot and do all this stuff, right? But I couldn't do that in my own business because I'd hit a ceiling at that point. And it really forced me to look at how do I pivot my own company to make more of me? And that's where Shelby and I came into the conversation and partnered together. Um, and then I took a whole bunch of other really great people and we created the Strategic Advisor Board, which is a spin-off model of Miller and Company, and just created, you know, my end vision, I guess, really, of where I want to end, and that's surrounding myself with people that are probably smarter than I am, and the input from that is just so powerful to where now we have this collection of such powerful people that can take my original vision and take it so much farther than I could ever take it myself, right? Because I am that person that knows most of the time I'm probably not the smartest person in the room. So I know that. But the one thing I've always considered myself to be good at was I know who to surround myself with. So
one of the most important qualities of a strong leader, for sure.
So that's, I mean, that's the most abbreviated story I can give. And it's been a ride coming into that. I mean, just this morning, I got to talk to a wonderful company local here. They're struggling. They have such a great product. And in an hour and a half, we basically just changed the whole face of their business. And they have all the right things to do now. And now they'll go forth and do those things and they'll thrive from them for sure. So that's what I'm passionate about. That's what I love to do. It's what wakes me up every morning at 3 a.m.
and 3 a.m.
and keeps me going. So
sure. That's the military piece in you for sure. At least one of them. Military and parent. So
yeah, for sure.
I want to. There's a few concepts I want to talk about because I think your approach. I mean, the results-based model I think is such an interesting, and I have continually heard you talk about this and our interaction with clients and fit calls and whatnot about how that's you wanted to flip the model of consulting on its head, and I think you definitely have with this type of model, and I really like how it serves as that's a foundation to your business and to your approach, and I think that's amazing, and the clients that go through that, I am one of them, understand how important that model is. But there's a few interesting pieces that I've discovered in our work together that I want you to talk about and what kind of the influences behind that. And the one I first want to talk about the whole idea of the dynamic atmosphere within a business. And one of your coined phrases, which is going to go into some publication someday soon, whether it's a blog post or whatever that is the micro pivot. And when we talk a lot about making these small shifts, because small businesses like my own and like many of my colleagues that are in the midst of, trying to figure out what next day looks like in the post-COVID world and where we're going to get our next client, that making these small adjustments and small changes really talks to the dynamic atmosphere within a business. I think that's a really interesting way to look at business because my background too. I come from academics and I come from structure and theory and those, you set out a business plan and everything should work. Can you talk a little bit about your strategy and kind of the dynamic movement of your strategy with your clients? I think that's a really unique piece to your approach.
Yeah, absolutely. And the micro pivot, right? That was really something that it came to me through taking companies through COVID in 2020. That's where I developed that concept. I didn't steal it from anybody. It's just something I thought of. And I was talking to a client one day, and we needed to do something small to get to the larger strategy. And that's why when I thought, well, we're using the word pivot. So if we do smaller pivots, micro pivots, right, then we can create revenue to support the next micro pivot, the next one, the next one, the next one. So I think of it really as, we have short-term, mid-term, and long-term planning, right? So think of long-term planning as the overarching strategy, right? This is where we want to go. We want to get to this strategy, right? So we know if we're planning our business plan, right? We know that we want to get to a certain place. So we create the large strategy to get there, but many companies can't fund that, right? So through short-term and mid-term planning, and this is all based around revenue, right? I mean, because revenue is what drives a business. So we have a certain dollar here, but that dollar doesn't support that strategy. So what we have to do in the short term is do, a micro pivot that then creates dollars that can then go here into the war chest, I call it, right? And then on this short-term path, we're just micro pivoting, whatever that is. That could be a lot of things, right? And then we hit the midterm, and now we can start pushing money back into our war chest while creating this larger strategy output. Okay, so if you run $100 million company, you can afford to make this big pivot strategy. But if you're a company like I talked to today,
right,
that is, they're small. And when I say small, I mean small, really small. And, they have to create revenue in increments in order to scale. Sure. Because when we say scale, what are all these things? A startup, for instance, what are all these things? Before they can even get here, right? We have systems, process, all these things, right? That have to be created probably before you even get here. So, you've got to figure out how do I pivot, but do it in such small increments that allow us to put money back in to reach some of these different waypoints. And if we do that, it does one major thing in my mind. It creates risk reduction, okay? Because I am a huge fan of creating revenue to support the next scale, right? Instead of going to a bank and saying, look, here's what I'm trying to do. It's going to cost me, $500K to do it. Will you give me a loan? The answer is going to be no, right? But if you figure out 2 or 3 of these micro pivots, and that's going to cost you $50K, well, sometimes you can self-fund that. Or that's a lot easier to go to a bank and talk to.
Sure.
So, smaller companies, micro pivoting it's almost a must, right? So it's almost the responsible thing to do.
Especially with how dynamic and things are moving and how trends that change. And I think that's an approach that is not in this consulting, like, I'm going to give you the answers, just run with it. This is a strategy that moves it. And that brings you to another thing that I think is so unique about your model, and something that I definitely align with, because my own business is helping experts use their own expertise to develop high ticket coaching programs or a program to support their business. It's all very unique. It's all very custom. And that's another thing that I think is so unique about your model is that, yes, you have a plan, but the strategy is all very custom to the needs of the business. And the strategy sometimes points to exit, but it doesn't always point to exit. So there's this, the strategy is very dynamic. And I think that's a really unique piece to your model. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, when you look at, business is mechanical in many ways, right? But does a somebody who sells CBD versus somebody who sells dog treats, right? They have different strategies that they have to put in place, right? It's not the same, and that's part of the problem with the consulting world is they try to cram every company in the same box, and you can't do that. It just mechanically, yes, you can, but just from an originality of each business and their mission and vision, you've got to work inside that, and that in itself just requires custom attention, right? Because yes, is it easy to say, here's a distribution partner, go work with them and they'll take care of you? That's great, but do they fit your mission? Do they have your same values? Do they have all those? And the answer could be no. And if it's not, then you've already stepped outside of every moral compass in your company that you wanted to have, right? So that's where you create custom solutions that stay within inside of your mission and vision in your company. If you're that company, some companies could care less. They don't care. But at the end of the day, we have to treat every company different. And yes, are some of the processes all the same? Of course they are. But it's the strategic solution that drives that company within its mission and vision and where they want to go, right? Not fill out this 35-page report and we'll give you some advice and off you go, right? It doesn't work. And most companies are really just left like, okay, what now? What's next, right? Instead of, wow, these guys are standing next to me through this whole process. And when I have a question, all I have to do is turn around and ask. I know I don't have to pay another $25,000 bill for somebody to get somebody's attention and get help. No, that's not how it should work. It shouldn't work that way. Right. And that's what really drove me to create this model the way it is created, because we are there. We are there holding their hand through the process, kind of.
That's another piece I was going to talk about too, is the partnership. And I think that rather than being consultants, or I'm a coach, so I work hand in hand with you, but right. The partnership I think is a very unique piece to the model. And I think it's a piece of the model that's it's unique, but it also like helps you be part of a community and helps you be a part of a community that wants you to be successful, that wants you to go through that process. And I have realized that with our work with the clients, the mutual clients that we have. And I think that's a really strong foundation. And just listening to you describe the strategic solution and how we have custom solutions, I want you to talk now about how that model is, because I see it as almost a perfect fit for your vision with the Strategic Advisor Board. And I want you to talk about how that model kind of fits into your vision of the Strategic Advisor Board, because I think there's so many possibilities to it, and it's a very powerful business. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, the easiest way I can put that is it's like taking my vision and amping it up on instead of 120, it's
Right.
now 300 volts, right? So
Right.
it's taking what I've done now and bringing in other experts in their field now that can be the one that knows the exact thing that needs to happen, right? So, I mean, just take what you do, branding, all this stuff, right? I know enough about that stuff to be dangerous, um, but but now when we have to have a branding conversation with a client in SAB, we have the branding expert to have that conversation. If
Mhm.
we need to have a technical conversation, we have the expert that can have that conversation. Or we need corporate level mindset stuff. We have somebody that's good at that. Value ladders, marketing, all these things, right? It's all there. I'm no longer depending on, I no longer have to just depend on my brain. Now we have 60 other collective brains, 60 plus other collective brains that we can provide a solution, and not just a solution, the perfect solution for that specific company that makes sense, that supports where they are in their life cycle. It supports their mission and vision of their company and where they want to go in the long term uh, mission and vision, and the approach that they take, whether it be holistic, whether it be, you know, whatever that is. But the point is none of us can know everything, right? It's impossible. So instead of, me working with a client myself and now seeing a need for something that I'm not necessarily an expert at, now I have to go train myself, right? I don't need to do that anymore because now I have the reach now within the board to make it all happen
Sure.
just like that, right? So there again, that's why I say I'm good at something, and we can only be good at a few things. And because I've always believed in, you know, get really good at one or two things and be great at those things, right? For me, that is the scaling process of companies. But, it's not mindset stuff. It's not, you know, branding and marketing and, funneling and all this kind of stuff. Do I know about them? Do I know stuff about them? Of course I do. I know enough about them to have the conversation. But the best thing is to be able to nest that person with the expert. And that's what the strategic advisor board brings to the table.
I think that's very powerful, and it's interesting as we have had more interactions and worked with some more clients and had more calls, how those are really, all of those qualities are really starting to show. And I think that's really, uh, it's a lot of power, but it also provides a much more efficient and a much more comprehensive solution for the clients that go through that process, because you not only get the model that works and that brings scale and that brings growth, but you get the expertise behind that. And I think that's a extremely powerful model, and I'm very excited to see where it goes. So
Well, it's just like somebody asked me the other day about Miller and Company versus the Strategic Advisor Board, and the best way I can put it is Miller and Company is a Toyota, SAB is a Cadillac. So that's really my focus is completely shifted away from Miller and Company. Yes, I still have clients over there that I work with, so on and so forth. But really the biggest power punch now is I've brought all of that over here, and now all the plugins are there and we're still plugging people in almost daily, new strategic partners, so on and so forth. So it's just continuing to evolve more and more. It's like a living, breathing entity.
Which I think is very important, and it's such a benefit to the clients and a benefit to anybody that's involved, because you not only have the 10 strategic advisors that are all partnered together, but there's like 50 partners that are all part of that can help, solve your copywriting needs or solve your publishing needs or whatever that is, whatever needs that you have within your own business. There's all of that is at your fingertips. And I think that's a big selling point for the business, but also something really, really valuable that doesn't exist elsewhere.
Yeah. And the unique thing, it's like I said this yesterday when we were doing our little meetup thing, our value meetup for our monthly, whatever we want to call that. But I made the comment yesterday of we can literally pick up SAB, drop it into a company, and say go on vacation for two months, and probably take that company a lot farther than it would be if the CEO stayed in the way. Right. Now, I'm not saying we do that, but I'm saying you could literally do that. We've built the structure to literally come in and take over fractionally every piece of that company. We could do that. That's not what we're going to do, but the power in that is being able to provide all the resources around that company. It's just the same way I think. I'm a CEO. I've got to surround myself with people that know what they're doing. Every company has to do that. So, and if you don't, you're probably going to die on the vine somewhere, right? Because you can't know it all. It's impossible. So imagine all of a sudden you're a business owner and, the strategic advisor board comes in and lays its wings around you and really helps you with every piece of that puzzle that you've not been able to figure out.
Right. Mm-hmm. It's so valuable, and it's something that has made a dramatic influence on my own business, and just understanding that the challenge that I think that is there is that, if you are a solo business owner and you've built up your business and you've done all the things and you've done really well with building up your business, it's really hard to let go of some of those things and to be like, no, I've done the accounting and the marketing, and I've done all the things. I've worn all the hats. I've done all the things. And it's hard to let go of some of that. And I can speak to that concept just within my own business, and just to watch some other people go through that too. So, but there is having the resources there, I think, is really powerful.
Yeah. And that's education, right? I mean, we've all been there. Yeah. We've all been there, and we all needed somebody to pull a crowbar out at some point and, pop our head out of our backside and go, look, there's a better way.
Make more money. You could save more money, and you could be ready for it. Yeah.
We've all been there. I've been there several times, obviously. I have mentors in my life. We all do, right? It's sometimes we need somebody beside us to just punch us in the throat a couple times and say, look, Bubba, you got to let go. Because here's the outcome if you don't. It's not good. So it's good to just have somebody to reinforce that behind you, for sure.
And having a group of experts and having your expertise with the multiple businesses you've been a part of and owned and sold, all of that expertise is such a valuable resource for those around you. And I think that's a very powerful piece. Jason, we could talk all day about the Strategic Advisor Board. We have in the past talked all day about it, but I'm going to wrap the interview up now. But I do want to say that there's going to be that we should do another interview so we can really get down to the process and the power of the Strategic Advisor Board, because I am involved with that, and I think it'd be really fun to get down to more of those ideas and the vision for that company, because we didn't really get into that. Yeah. But I think we'll wrap up this piece today. Thank you for sharing your expertise and your story. A big piece of what I do is connecting your story to your business, and knowing more about your story and knowing more about the background and what type of experiences you've had that influence your vision for your business. And this new business that is formed is, in my estimation, it's something that's tremendously important for all CEOs, and to be able to connect their expertise to their larger audience. And I think that's key. So as we wrap it up, is there anything to remind the audience about? The one thing I will say is that this event that we had yesterday, this meetup, was a great, all of the Strategic Advisor Board is there. All 10 of us are there. We're all giving advice to the people, advice and vision and strategy to the people that show up to the call. And I think it's a really fun environment to be able to do that. And that happens every month. So we'll have a live one in Boulder, Colorado next month. And then hopefully we'll be live streaming that too. I think that'd be a powerful thing to add to that too. But we're going to do that every month to just add value and to give people this outside perspective that is so critical as we build business. Is there anything else you'd like to tell the audience before we wrap it up? Well,
I would just say that, success isn't always measured by dollars. It's measured often by how it makes us feel, right? And don't lose yourself in the process, because so many people do that. They lose themselves in the process. Dream it, believe it, achieve it. And, one of my core philosophies I've always had is I don't follow the herd. When somebody tells me that that's not going to work, don't do it that way, that's just not the traditional way, I turn around and I go the opposite direction. Why? Because that's what creates things that change the world.
Absolutely.
And at the end of the day, that's what we should all want to do. Whether it's this big of a footprint or an Elon Musk footprint, it doesn't matter. If you change one person's life in this world, I think we can all be pretty happy with that. So, absolutely. There you go. Yeah, that's pretty powerful. Dream it, believe it, achieve it. I wrote that down. That's going somewhere on the SAB site for sure. All right. Well, Jason, let's wrap this interview up. Thank you again for listening to the podcast that explores how expertise can create and influence your business. And I look forward to interviewing all the members of the Strategic Advisor Board. They don't know it's coming, but they're going to be featured on here too. And I look forward to exploring more experts and helping provide the path for you to create your own business. So I will speak to you next time. Thank you. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Expertise Podcast and hope you're inspired to think about how to further monetize the expertise and the processes that you have in your own business. See you next time.